How many asylum seeker boats have been towed or turned back to Indonesia during the past month? There have been reports sourced from Indonesia that it's 5.
Well, Lee, as you know, we don't comment or one way or the other on reports of things of that nature that go to maritime operations, and there's a very good reason for that, and it's been set out not only by myself but people like the former Chief of the Defence Force, Angus Houston, and of course Lieutenant General Campbell himself, who leads Operation Sovereign Borders. It's not secrecy for secrecy's sake, it's secrecy with a purpose, and that is to protect the integrity of the operations we undertake. It's to protect those who are involved and subject to those operations. To do otherwise puts both the operation and people at risk, and that's my first responsibility, and it's not something I intend to compromise for the sake of satiating media interest.
But how are you deciding what information is operational? Because you were happy a second ago to give me that 1,100 people had turned up on 20 boats, but then in regards to this, you're not prepared to give information. So how are you determining what's operational and what's not?
Well, that matter is principally determined by those who run the Operation Sovereign Borders Joint Agency Task Force, which is led by Lieutenant General Campbell. That's where those decisions are made about what's operational and what can be disclosed. And before the election, I made that very clear. I said communication on these things would be subject to a protocol established by the leader of that task force, and that's exactly what we've done. See, Lee, what we're doing in government is what we promised to do in government. We're acting in accordance with the commitments we made to the Australian people, and we're getting the results so far that they would hope we would have achieved, but there's still a long way to go. Arrivals, as you know, are well down. We discussed that last time I was on the program, but there is still a distance to travel.
There's no way, though, for the Australian public to weigh up in their own mind, are the results worth the cost of what's going on, because they don't know what's involved in delivering those results. They take your word on it that it's humane and that no one's injured and so on, but they don't really have any way of knowing that information themselves.
Well, where suggestions were made in relation to one incident several weeks ago, which was the subject of a report that we made ourselves about an interception near Melville Island, there were some accusations made against Defence Force personnel there, which have been clearly and flatly rejected by the Chief of the Defence Force, as well as the Head of Customs and Border Protection, as well as myself. Now, where there are incidents involving people at sea that has put their own lives in jeopardy, or there's been rescue operations of that nature, the General and I have made it clear on every occasion that we would hold briefings to report on those incidents, and we have done that on a number of occasions. And so I think it's safe for the Australian people to assume that where there are no such briefings reporting incidents of that, they haven't occurred.
Well, since you've been Minister, you've had a weekly briefing on these issues every Friday. The last one was on the 20th of December. Will that practice of the Friday press conference be continuing this year?
Well, General Campbell and I will hold an operational briefing tomorrow here in Canberra. Now, what we said before the Christmas break, and we've been through the first 100 days of Operation Sovereign Borders, and we held those weekly operational briefings, and we also released information on the number of arrivals. And if you go back some months ago, that was the issue. Would we be disclosing what the arrivals were? Now, we've continued to do that every week. We've released that arrival information, the number of people transferred to facilities, how many have been taken into the Authority of Immigration institutions here in Australia, and we've done that on a weekly basis. Now, we will continue to provide that information on a weekly basis. We will continue to provide briefings.
Sorry to interrupt, in a press conference situation where people have an opportunity to ask you questions?
We will issue a statement on the numbers of arrivals and the transfers, and we will hold operational briefings like we will tomorrow when we have something to say and when we have something to report.
OK, so they won't be weekly now, they won't be locked in as a weekly thing?
We'll do them on an as-needs basis to detail operational matters that are able to be released, and we'll respond to questions there. And as you know, Lee, I'm here tonight. I've been here before. I'm available for interviews, and I'll be, in the course of my normal portfolio responsibilities, holding press conferences on other matters, and I'm sure journalists won't be backward in coming forward. They rarely are, in my experience.
Last week, the Prime Minister drew a parallel between the secrecy surrounding asylum seeker interceptions to wartime operations. That's an overstatement, isn't it?
Well, it goes to what are operational matters and the discretion needed when dealing with those things. And I could apply a similar scenario in relation to a civil matter. I mean, you don't have the police running around when they're dealing with drug investigations or other things like that, providing a running commentary to the media every week about the technical and tactical issues they're engaged in to track down criminals.
But this was likened to a war. It's not a war, is it?
We are tracking down criminals, and we're dealing with threats to our national sovereignty of our borders. And we are engaged in quite specific and difficult operations, and to ensure the integrity and safety of those operations, it's our duty to do that in a discreet way and in a sensitive way, which means that we can keep doing them and they can keep stopping the boats, because that's the objective. You
mentioned the progress you'd made in the numbers of boat arrivals that are occurring. A poll published last week in the Age newspaper shows that 60% of Australians think that Australia's policy on asylum seekers should be harsher. So that would show, even with the progress, most Australians don't think that it's enough progress.
Well, whether it's tough enough or not tough enough is not the point. Whether it's effective is the point. I'm interested in effective measures, and our measures are proving to be very, very effective, and I want to maintain that. And that's why, as the Prime Minister said last week, if that means we're going to be accused of secrecy and things like that, I mean, I think, frankly, some people have got to come down off the grassy knoll a bit on this, and the conspiracy theories are getting a bit crazy. I mean, last week I was accused of not facing in the media. I was on leave with my family on the south coast of New South Wales. I mean, there's no conspiracy there. I took annual leave.
Minister, thank you very much for your availability tonight.
Thank you very much, Lee.